planned in 2009-10, prior to the city center. I have one slide before I introduce Alicia Snar from the Maricopa County Library District. Alicia was hired as the librarian for the city of Goodyear to focus in on the programs that will be provided into the city of Goodyear, and she'll be talking a little bit about what she's planned. But just to quickly provide some background, last year the city and county signed an IGA to share the cost of providing library services. Traditionally, the model is the city steps forward and funds the construction of a facility, and the county steps forward and funds the operations and maintenance of that facility. And that is still the plan. In fact, the city and county staff have been very involved in the planning for the city center building. They provided space planning data to the consultants, and that proposal is scheduled to come back to the city council next week. We've also met with city and county staff have met with the colleges to discuss kind of the systems that are in place that each have, and just to identify areas of collaborations. Each is using a different kind of database, so the goal is to focus in on the technologies that talk to each other and find ways to collaborate for library services between the city, county, and the colleges. So noting that the goal is basically opening the branch at the city center in 2010, city and county staff have also been working together to talk about programs and services that can start prior to. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Alicia Snar, who is the new county librarian for the city of Goodyear. So, this one.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you so much. It's a really great opportunity to share with you some things that we're going to be doing with the library. My goal is to bring the kind of quality youth programming that your residents have seen from our other Maricopa County branches. And to start with that, we're going to begin with summer reading for in the summertime. Most of you would be familiar with summer reading programs for the 4 to 12 age groups, school-age children. The county has 2 other programs. We have Bunny Catches the Reading Bug this year for children birth to age 3, and then the Catch the Reading Bug for kids 4 to 12. And we also have Metamorphosis at your library for teens 12 to 18. Initially, the plan is for children to be able to sign up for, am I doing this wrong?
No, I don't think you are.
I don't think it's you.
Initially, children will be able to sign up for summer reading at the Goodyear City Hall. They read and keep track of what they're reading and how long they're reading, and earn prizes as they work their way around a game board. All the programs work the same for birth to age 18. At the end of each program, all kids earn a book, so they all have a book to take home with them. So in support of the summer reading program that we're holding in the summer, we have several events. The first will be a summer reading kickoff on May 31st at Fire Station 183, the community park. We'll have opportunities for kids to sign up for the summer reading program and then enjoy some entertainment and activities. From June 2nd through the 21st, for 8 weeks, I'll be holding story times at the City Hall for children aged 2 to 8. And on the 4th of July, at your Star Spangled 4th, we're going to have an arts and crafts booth to, again, give the Goodyear residents information about library programming for their community and in support of the summer reading program. As the summer reading program comes to a close, I'll be, at that point, I plan to design and implement library programs throughout the community. So as opposed to bringing people all to City Hall to participate in this one program, my goal at that point is to work with community associations and neighborhood groups around the city and hold programming in those centers that are around the city. I'm also working with the school districts and the YMCA and other groups in the community that offer services to children. And the goal there is to collaborate with them and piggyback onto some of the programs they have and expand them with library services. For example, Summer Rec, I can go in and offer some reading type activities that support the summer reading program. So that's the end of my part of the presentation. And if you have any questions, Mario will be fielding questions at the end. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have a question?
Describe birth to age 3.
Excuse me?
Birth to age.
Birth to age 3.
Yes.
Reading program. Birth to age 3.
Yes. You have a question about what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't see an infant learning how to read.
Well, clearly in a program like that, there involves an adult or an older sibling that would be reading with that, or caregiver reading with that child. But the exciting thing that's happening right now in libraries is that the research supports early literacy. And the more a child is read to in their earliest years, the better off they are in building early literacy skills that will create a foundation that will help them to become stronger and better readers when they're in school. It's important, it's vital that we step in and support kids at the earliest ages, because you can't wait till they're in school. It's too late once they're in school. So a program like that offers the opportunity to educate parents and caregivers and families about that importance.
Within that age span.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just our younger daughter's child who's at 8 months. She started reading to him. He's now 10 months, and he actually turns the pages and points to things on the book.
Absolutely.
So when you it's amazing, because back in our day, you didn't learn until you were in kindergarten. But they truly are using that, and you really can see the child react.
Absolutely. And that's the kind of thing that library programming in the Goodyear is going to offer to the citizens, is that kind of information and that kind of modeling for parents and families. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So in addition to the programs that Alicia had talked about, there's an effort to help market the library at City Hall. And so there are plans to install a flat panel screen, just much like the one we see on the wall there, and also a library kiosk in the lobby of City Hall. Both the screen and also the kiosk, it's funded by the Maricopa County Library District. And this is an example of the kind of ad that'll be running on a continuous loop, promoting library programs. This one promotes story time. This one promotes the homework club. And so, basically we're planning on installing this on the wall outside of room 117, so, right directly when you walk in City Hall lobby, just kind of outside the waiting area. Where people wait for meetings, and also there are a lot of people in line paying utility bills. This will just kind of be running on a loop promoting library programs. And we also have the opportunity to start promoting city events. So this is an example of the Heart and Soul Run. We'll also promote, the Holly Jolly Festival, the Halloween Festival, and so forth, 4th of July. And we also have an opportunity to promote new services, so, paying your utility bill online. So these kinds of ads will be running in City Hall beginning this summer. This is a picture of the library kiosk that the county has funded. It's the first location. To be installed is at Goodyear City Hall. It'll make its way into, similar kiosks will be installed in the library branches throughout Maricopa County coming soon. But basically what this is kind of access for customers to library services. Access to 650,000 items. People can browse the collections, place holds on materials, and so that you can pick up at nearby branches. So It'll be outside of City Hall. If you're here conducting business, you can kind of jump on the web, look at what programs are being planned for the library, and also search the collections if you like. So that's the short term. As far as other initiatives after that, Alicia talked about the programming, kind of focusing in on programs that are coming to Goodyear. So that's basically what she was brought on board for, to kind of push programs, reach out to community organizations in Goodyear, work with the city, work with the school districts, community organizations to find those groups that are already in place and kind of bring the programs to those groups. Also establish a relationship so that programs could also be run out of those facilities. So city and county staff have worked with or met with community groups in Palm Valley and Estrella Mountain area. They've expressed interest in working with the city and the library to open their doors so that the community can have a point in their neighborhood for possibly pickup, drop-off down the road, or possibly programming. And the library bookmobile is another idea that it's currently on. The county owns it. It's currently on loan with another community, and it'll be available this summer. And so, city and county staff are currently working to find that location and the hours of operation where it could be available in Goodyear. And also, like I said, community facilities for programs, pick-up, drop-off locations, and then obviously the city center branch. Haven't lost focus that, that's kind of where everybody is kind of waiting for, and that's a regional facility at the city's center branch. So the library will continue to be involved in the planning of that building. Just a quick thank you to Information Technology and Public Works. They really weighed in behind the scenes and helped kind of plan for the installation of the equipment in Goodyear City Hall. Community Services is going to be that point of contact for the summer reading program. And then many other departments have weighed in on the library in general, PIO, Economic Development, Deputy City Management, and grants. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Right over here, questions, comments?
No question, but just a really nice comment. I think this is something that we're all looking forward to, and I'm glad you're starting early because it makes it sound like it's more real to us than just continually talking about it. So good. Thank you.
Okay. Georgia,
Well, I just think
Councilmember
it's a
Lord.
great foundation to the building, and I agree with Brenda that people have been questioning, is it really going to happen? It's really going to happen, and this definitely shows steps that we're taking to educate the public and bring them on board before the building's actually built. Thank you.
Councilmember Souza.
Thank you. I really realize the program in its infancy, but long range, what type of electronics are we going to become involved with the county as far as library facilities are concerned?
Technology.
Technology.
The county has their own database. They have ties to collections that come from universities. So it's not only kind of what's available within the county system, but also it includes higher education collections. And so that kind of lends itself to the collections that the two colleges, UIW and Franklin Pierce, have. And so those technologies need to talk to each other and so that they can maximize kind of the databases.
That I'm looking to would be computers available for people who attend the library.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There are going to be computer stations available in the new branch.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councilmember Osborne.
Wanted to say I'm looking forward to the Bookmobile. That's what I grew up with in Phoenix until we had a library close by, and all my summers were with Bookmobile. But also, I know that Alicia's off and running and has contacted me about getting with the teens, and so I know she's prepared, and good luck. Glad you're on board. Thanks.
Okay, good job, Mario, and thank you to the county for supporting us here.
Thanks. Just one last note, Mayor, if I may, on the Bookmobile. It's the plan is that it'll be parked. It's rather old, and
It's probably the one I had.
yeah, there you go. But so we're looking to find that parking place where it's visible or it makes the best sense. So that's kind of the direction that we're headed for the Bookmobile.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now receive a briefing on the status of revisions to 2007 Conservation and Curtailment Plan. Sandra Rhodey.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be able to give you a little bit of an update on where we stand on the Conservation and Curtailment Plan. I'd like to start that by backing up just a little bit to talk about how we got here. In 1980, the state passed legislation that set a pattern across the country for setting the stage for sustainability, addressing our problem of using groundwater as our exclusive water source in many cases. And that legislation set in place 5 active management areas. The Phoenix area decided that its goal for 2025 was to achieve a safe yield. Before I get too far into that, I want to back up, though, and remind you that you can interrupt me at any time. I've taught a lot, so I should be able to pick up my chain of thought after you have a question if I pass over something too quickly or add too much detail. Just tell me to move on. Okay. With that safe yield goal came instructions from the AMA on how municipal providers were to manage their water sources. All of those municipal providers who wish to grow, to add additional customers, were asked to obtain a designation of assured water supply. There are a number of hoops they have to pass through to do that. One of them is to have a water conservation plan on file that meets the goals of the active management area in which they are present. So we are about at the time where we have to apply again for a designation. In 1997, we prepared our initial plan here in Goodyear. And in 2007, we went back to it and we put together some revisions and we incorporated new requirements that were set in 2004 to have a plan to address what we do in drought conditions. This year, the city is planning to combine those and have a demand management plan that includes conservation and what we do if our supplies are curtailed on an acute basis. We have an emergency outage. We must do that in this year because at the end of the year, by December 2008, we have to apply for the assured water supply. And we have to have a plan on file. Excuse me?
What do we have to do by the end of the year?
We must apply for our assured water supply designation.
Okay.
If we would fail to get that designation, then we could no longer add water customers, i.e. we'd have to stop adding new homes and development in our water service area, which is not consistent with our goals in Goodyear. So it's timely and even urgent to get this plan fully commented upon by the community at large and get it in place. We have a number of obvious drivers for what should go into this plan and what should it achieve. First of all, it has a legal requirement to reduce our dependence on groundwater. There are a lot of different ways to do that, but if the plan at the end of the day doesn't achieve that goal, it's not going to pass muster. The city can lead by example. Essentially, that's not really a choice here. If people perceive that we are throwing water away, they won't proceed to do anything to save water in their own yards. All over the valley, cities get dinged because they have green space in their parks and people don't recognize they're watered with reclaimed water. And so they say, I'm not getting rid of my grass until you stop watering grass in the park. That's not an obvious choice, and it's not a necessary thing to do, but we do need to lead by example if we expect citizenry to follow us. The next two are almost obvious to me, but we tend to overlook them when we're thinking about conservation. Water sustains life. If we don't have it, we don't continue living. And here in a desert, water is scarce. Deserts are fragile places. A lot of people come here because they like the sunshine and what comes along with it, the beautiful scenery, the fragility of living in a desert. Despite its beauty and fragility, it's not a forgiving place. There are plenty of species that are extinct today, and there are civilizations that have come and gone because water-saving habits weren't part of the picture. So we don't want to join that line. disappearing from view. We have a number of ways we can choose targets for water conservation. I'm going to propose that 4 of them are really critical to include in this plan. One is that we can achieve savings from those who are largest water users. Who uses the most water in Goodyear? In a minute, I'm going to try and show you and suggest why we might go after that. Surely there would be some savings we could achieve if those who use the most saved a little bit. Our thirstiest customers present opportunity. Who are the individual customers that use the most water here in Goodyear? If they all saved a bit, again, it wouldn't be so painful for the rest. We have some water that costs us a lot more than others. The last gallons we put on in the summertime cost more for us to deliver than the first gallons we deliver in the middle of the winter. So maybe they're targets, or maybe they're not. Finally, most of our future customers don't live here yet. So if we change standards, they aren't affected by the fact we changed something. They come into the new way. And the savings that we can achieve in that way are fairly painless. And most of our population is still not here. So maybe there are some savings there. Let's look at that. What you've got here is a pie chart that shows for 2007 who is consuming most of our water and who is consuming less of it. I'd like to point out that over half of our water was used by residents. Over half of 2.7 billion gallons of water was used by residents. So that means 1.35 billion gallons. And if our residents are typical, and they seem to be, then they probably use 50 to 70% of that outside, watering their lawn or in other outdoor water uses. So 25 to 35% of our water use is already labeled as outdoor water use. Okay, so there's a target. There's a very large population to go after. Harder to get because there's lots of people in it. Second, notice if you look at the red sector, that another 20% of our water is used by those we label as turf users. That's irrigation. Uses for HOAs on their common property, where they're just watering whatever it is they have. Retention areas, common areas that are used for recreation, medians on side streets, school fields, those all qualify as turf. We're using 20% of our water on that. So if you take that 20 and add it to the 25 to 35% we got from the residents, we've got approximately 50% of our water already going for outdoor use, suggesting that we have a real good target there for our conservation plan. Third, you'll notice that the next biggest sector is marked as city use. We are our own biggest customer. 1/6 of the water that we deliver is delivered to the city, whether to city parks or to city irrigated obligations we've taken on to irrigate outdoors for another party or for the use in our facilities. Remember also that this does not include another 120 million gallons of water that we use for the city up in Litchfield Public Service Company's service area. So the city has a lot to gain by making itself one of the targets for water conservation because we're using a lot of water ourselves. Not just lead by example, but lead because we're a big user. Yes, Mayor and Council?
Does Lipscomb have any program such as this in place?
I have just spoken with Matthew Garlick, the business manager, and they are going to undertake 5 initiatives for water conservation in the next year. One of those will be a joint one I'll come back to later.
Okay.
But as a private corporation, they're under a completely different set of regulations, and they're not allowed to recover some of the costs of conservation through their rate structure, which imposes a real disincentive for private companies to do water conservation.
Well, if they're, and the majority of this council lives north of I-10.
Yes.
And it just galls me every morning that my neighbor 2 doors up from me has a beautiful lawn, it's nice and green, and water just flows off of that thing into the street, into the gutters for about 2 hours at a time. And I've called time and time again to Lipscomb and complained about this. No activity at all. And I would assume that we are basically drawing from the same water sources underground that Lipscomb is. Our well sites probably are at the same depth. So by them using more water, it's taking water away from the city well as well, as I understand it. So, but it to me, it means that we have to get Lipscomb on board and become a player in this endeavor.
I agree with you, and as I said, one of the first initiatives that we'll undertake, we will be undertaking jointly. We'll be looking at ways that we can extend some of our educational programming north into that area, and we'll also talk about enforcement. So I think those will address some of your concerns.
Mr. Mayor, question.
Yes.
All the golf courses that we have in town, are most of those reclaimed water? I mean, you haven't really mentioned them here on the pie chart, so I'm not sure where they stand.
At this time, we have no deliveries to golf courses of reclaimed water.
Can't get it.
That's a likely candidate because we expect to be delivering our reclaimed water. We don't have distribution lines. That
So
would
where
take
are they
it.
then on the chart here?
Where are they then on the chart? Many of them actually have their own groundwater sources. Sean, do you want to add something to that?
Mayor, members of the council, the Palm Valley golf courses use a combination of groundwater wells and some reclaimed from Lipscomb. In Estrella, they utilize the non-potable system, which today is primarily made up of groundwater, untreated groundwater. We are sending a little bit, just one point of clarification, we are sending about 130,000 gallons a day from the Rainbow Valley Water Reclamation Facility up to the Estrella golf course. So there's no golf courses in the city for irrigation purposes that are using potable water. They're using either a combination of groundwater or reclaimed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Sean, while you're still there, the corrugate wash facility, is any of that reclaimed water being used yet?
No, it's currently, Mayor, council member, it is being discharged into the wash, and we're getting some recharge credits. We're undergoing a scoping project right now for a facilities master plan. We'll be hopefully bringing that to council before the summer break, where we're going to go in and do a facilities master plan and lay out some improvements. The first being putting that effluent into the non-potable system, and ultimately whether it gets into the lakes or it just gets into the non-potable distribution system, we're not sure yet, but we want to put that to beneficial use. It's about 500,000 gallons a day.
Great.
So we get that into the system. Thank you.
Okay, let's see where we are. All right. Let's go on then. So we've talked about the targets that we can identify based on who's using water right now, who's using our water, and where the city itself is a customer. In addition, we can look at the patterns we have in water use through the year. You've all seen this before, I know, in a different version from Sean's presentations during the rate studies discussions. So I don't want to belabor it, but through the year we have quite a bit of variation in how much water we're using. You can see the peak in red there in the month of June is over 9 million gallons per day, and in December it falls much lower. In fact, in July, the average is over twice as high as the lowest weekly average in December. Where do you suppose that water is coming from and going to? I think we've probably identified the locations where we can do a lot of savings without much pain by identifying that outdoor water use is a significant part of our water use here in Goodyear. And I want to stress that the plan has not been fully formulated. In fact, tomorrow the city staff are having a strategic planning session to talk about their role in it and overall goals for water savings across the city. But I would like to present some goals that we think probably should be included in that plan, however it develops. First of all, there is that legal requirement that reduce per capita groundwater pumping. This will become increasingly challenging. Right now, we serve mostly residents, and not necessarily all with large yards. But as we add in a mix of other users, it'll become more challenging to keep that per capita use down. One of the things that many conservation programs don't do is set targets for conservation. And that makes it hard to tell if you're getting anywhere. The state sets one target, but that doesn't begin to cover the diversity of what are you accomplishing in your residential area versus what are you covering in your golf courses, and your turf areas. So we want to establish some measurable targets for conservation and use them consistently to measure progress. Increase the efficiency in city water use. We've talked about that. Develop a citywide ethic of water saving so new residents come in knowing that this is a town where water saving is important. We could all name places we've heard of where it's known that water saving is a way of life if you're going to live there. The other places that are, should I say, notorious, since I'm the water conservation specialist, for being otherwise, for flagrantly using water. So which would we like to be? Of course, I'm going to argue that we'd like to be in the water saving camp and have more people here. We need to reduce our peak demand as a multiplier upon our base use. We can expect that our peak demand is going to continue to rise because we have more people here and more users, but we can push down the multiplier between that July and December use. Feel free to pitch in if you've got any other suggested goals. As we deliberated over that, one of the first tactics that we decided we needed to undertake was to brand the program. Around the valley, there's a lot of different names for water conservation, and everyone knows Water Use It Wisely, which is a communications campaign. But that's also used outside Arizona. So we looked for some ways we could say something specific. And actually, we want to credit Michael Leon for coming up with this. It came up as we were working on a project you're going to see in just a minute. So we worked with the communications staff on developing a communication plan, press releases that will go out. There's some website improvements we'll make to help establish the branding within the city, and we will be holding the first Beat the Peak campaign this year. I'll come back to that a couple of times. So what are tactics that we should include in our plan? A number of these are familiar to you. You see them in other plans, and some of you have brought them up in prior discussions. Audits to drive change. How do you know where to cut? Where's waste? Use an audit. The city is planning to undergo an audit. In fact, we've issued an RFP and hope to issue a contract for that, bring it to you before the end of the fiscal year. There's also been discussion of individual irrigation audits, and we're exploring some costing for that right now. Annual and peak water targets will be set. Set a target for the water use and see if we can get there and exceed it. This has been extremely successful in Albuquerque. They've dropped their water use from 250 gallons per person per day to about 180, well on their way to 175, which is their goal for the moment. Was that an annual focus for the water saving program? There's lots of ways to save water, but if you don't focus, people get confused. Build customer awareness of ways to conserve. 2 studies that have been done recently in the Valley indicate that people get confused. They hear on the one hand that we live in a desert and we should save water. They hear on the other hand from their water providers like us, we've planned carefully, we've got plenty of water. So they said, then why should I have to save? We need to make the connection that one of the reasons we do have a safe water supply is because we plan on some conservation. And so you are a part of the program. And help people see how to do that, which they also say they have a difficult time understanding. Research and evaluation need to be a part of the plan. A lot of times suggestions are made about things should be included in water conservation plans, but there's not data to support whether they actually generate savings. We want to be hard-nosed about that and actually see that we adopt things that do produce change. Speaking of decisions that might be driven by research, one of the primary areas is what should you give rebates for? Should you give rebates for everything that's reputed to save water? Should you decide that instead it's important to make sure that the consumer and the utility get paid back fairly quickly? Are you willing to pay for just any old thing that will save water no matter how much it costs? With limited resources, I think the city needs to be thinking that we'll pick for those that are efficient in achieving water savings. And that brings us around to water softeners. There's been a lot of discussion about water softeners, and recently in the paper, one of the developers that's working here said that they will put in a different kind of a softener than most people have in their garages. And they've called upon us to actually mandate that everyone have that alternate type of water softener. It is more expensive to use. It's considerably more expensive to use. So to mandate it to be in every household is not something that we would necessarily want to adopt. Now, is it attractive? Is it a possibility down the road when it's used more and it becomes less expensive? Maybe. So we'd like to look at only mandating things that will be cost effective for both the city water service company and for the customer. And be thoughtful about that. This is guidance that you'll be able to provide us, but we will do the research on what the costs are that are known.
At the last council meeting, regular council meeting, I requested that you get information to the council relative to the new water softeners that's being advertised on TV. I hope you would give us that information so that we're pretty well educated on the cost factors and what it entails.
Okay, and I will continue to research that. There's some new stuff being done, and I will come back to you with some information on that. Okay?
One other item, from the standpoint of conservation. Several years ago, we were concerned about hot water now, and we allocated $25,000 a year to offering rebates for the application of this device. Why hasn't this been brought up in your budget recently?
Actually, there was a sunset put on that offering. I can also mention that when I checked back with the finance department to see how often that was actually taken advantage of, they only had about 100 customers that had chosen to use it over the lifetime of that particular rebate.
I think that's because it wasn't, because that, to me, that's been one of the issues moving into Arizona.
Okay, well, that is a possibility that the rebate was not clear. We didn't have anybody who was freed up to push them. I'd also like to point out that some of the recirculation pumps use as much energy, they consume as much in energy to the water savings. So you switch off.
I don't buy that.
Water or electricity? I mean,
Well, actually, they're well connected, and so that is a challenge for when we're making recommendations. To produce electricity requires huge amounts of water. So we may not be seeing the difference here, but we're thoughtful about the fact that if we're just making the customer trade off, we're not sure how much water savings we're accomplishing there. Okay. But that's not to say that we're not keeping an eye on the water recirculating pumps. I have my eyes on them. And we haven't selected anything as in or out for rebates at this point. We do know that right now the budget does not allow for rebates. So rebates are something to look at in a couple years in the future. And we think that the decision probably needs to reflect in part who's saving. Is anybody saving? Money, water, and where are the balances?
I want to point out that developers have agreed to put in connectors into every home that's built in
That's
Goodyear
true.
for this facility. And I don't think the developers are bringing this information out to the prospective home buyer. And I disagree with you that it's not a conservation effort and that it doesn't conserve. I use my facility, my unit, twice a day. Okay? That's in the morning for showers, okay? And the electricity that's used in it goes on for about maybe 30 seconds.
Right, and it does
It's
depend
very
on the
minimal.
model
Very
and
minimal.
the usage you put to it. So one of the things that would be key for that
You're not
kind of
pushing
thing would
that
be
button
education.
every day, every time you turn on the water. All you're doing is pushing that button when you want hot water now.
I appreciate your reminder. Thank you. I think that recirculating pumps will be something we'll keep in mind
But
when we do have funds for the rebates.
Sandy, but a lot of these things that you're talking about, you can talk up now, even if we're not offering rebates or any of that type of thing. I know one of the things that I've kind of been hot on lately, since water's my thing, is talking to the to the parks people and to the public service group about trying some artificial turf. Some of the communities have had great luck with that. Of course, the technologies, George and I worked on a special team. The technologies are there that we can actually have it look just like grass. You have to get down on your hands and knees and see that it's not. And so I think we could talk up a lot of those things, even if we're not ready to do rebates to any of those.
I agree, and so somewhere down the list, we've got education about alternatives, and short of mandating or providing rebates, educating people about choices they can make that might not be encouraged to the point where we put money into them is certainly an appropriate thing to do. And as we expand the website resources, that's one of the places we can do that. It's more efficient than handing out brochures, which quickly become out of date as the next model of something new comes along. So we'll certainly be looking at providing that type of education for people. One of the other areas to look at for the future is appropriate ordinance and guideline changes, and we certainly would be coming to council about any such things that we're considering. Another area is enforcement of existing things or enforcement of anything that we pass. For example, how many of you knew that the state of Arizona restricts the amount of grass you have in your yard, your personal yard, to 30% of the whole yard?
Front
We
or
know
back,
that.
or front, back, or both.
It's of the total.
It's a total.
Of the total.
Say that you shouldn't have, or they allow.
The state says you shouldn't have more than 30% in your yard.
Geez, that could have a
They're
huge
discouraged.
loss.
So who's enforcing that one? Obviously, no one.
Some of the homeowners associations, I know Pebble Creek, we
Okay.
enforce that.
All right, but generally, that is not an enforcement policy. And I'm not arguing that we should go out. I definitely do not want to go patrol the streets and say, you have 33%. You're out.
But educating your
But
homeowners
educating
association.
people that there's a reason that these restrictions are placed and then working with them on it. When we pass restrictions, we want to make sure that we have thought about whether we're using them for education or we actually plan to proactively enforce them all the time.
Is there state law on how big your pool can be as far as its proportion?
There is not any regulation on how big your pool can be.
Just wondered.
You don't want to come to my house. I'm not a good person. I feel so guilty right now. Okay.
Shame on you.
I know, and I'm a native.
Well, I'm not here to make people feel guilty.
I know.
I'll do that in another presentation, okay? Clearly, outdoor water use is something we target. That seems to be a good consensus in the room, just from even our humorous comments. In addition, we need to target our alternative water sources. In your questions to Sean, we're right on that target. In addition to reclaimed and remediated water, we can also encourage people to use rainwater and gray water in their houses and in their irrigation at home and save from the water demand we have. I'd like to turn quickly to our Beat the Peak campaign so that I don't hold you up from getting to other items on your agenda. The initial components for this year's activities are completing the conservation and curtailment plan. As I mentioned already, we'll audit city usage of water and address where we can do some saving there. The water waste ordinance that was passed last year has not been actively enforced so far. Before we enforce it, we really need to make people aware that it exists and what it is. So we'll be doing that between now and late fall and giving out educational notices with a step towards we'll do citations. And if anybody's flagrantly throwing thousands of gallons down the street regularly, then we may have to issue citations soon. In addition, we will be able to launch a free pre-rinse valve distribution for our commercial kitchen customers. Lipsco has agreed to partner with us on that. So I expect to come back to you with a COAC on it in the near future. We'll have a Beat the Peak campaign to cut that summer usage down. We've already begun announcing it with the distribution this week of booklets on conserving water to fourth graders in some of our schools. In Focus is going to have an article on our water conservation program. It's a little bit larger than usual. If you look at the attachment on the right-hand side, you can see what is mounted on our website every day now. All the time we have a listing that shows what our water use has been on average for the past week. So customers can track how it changes through the year and how it changes from year to year. So I'm hoping that as the Beat the Peak campaign wears on, we can point people to that and say, you make a difference. Look and see how much. Oh, we're not moving. Okay. We'll launch Beat the Peak in June when the peak actually starts by distributing a conservation calendar to our customers. You'll notice down in the right-hand corner that we have a different variant on the logo for our overall program. That's the first one that Michael Leone put together. He's the one who's done the layout for the calendar. Every month we'll have a different theme with some information about that conservation topic, 3 tips on how to save water. Models will come from the Water Resources Department. We're doing our shooting the next,
Of course.
2 or 3 days. We thought it was a good way to help people see what their water department does, because a lot of people don't know what they do. They do see us around town, but they don't know what we do. We'll have an exhibit at City Hall in the lobby in June, and we will distribute sprinkler gauges so people can see how much water they are putting on their yard. And if it's more than the recommendation, then maybe that will push them to do something about it. And in July, we'll have a presence at the July 4th event, pass out free home water audit kits so people can check how much water they're using at home, initiate irrigation classes so people know how to set that timer and how to keep track of their irrigation system to see if it's leaking. We'll continue similar initiatives through September. To close, I just want to come back to the planned timeline. Tomorrow, we'll be meeting with city staff to discuss strategies that are specific to city departments and what uses they know across the city. Then from May through July, we're soliciting community input from community associations as well as the developer community. In August, we'll turn to the curtailment portion of the plan with the intent that we'll come back to a work session here in early October, and we'll be able to adopt this plan then before fall is over and we reach our deadline for the assured water supply. Do you have any other questions for me tonight? You'll get another chance at this particular topic later this year.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll now move to the, get an update on the finance utilities, new Click2Gov online payment processing website. Teresa?
Nope. I am Darlene Hutchcraft. I am the customer service supervisor for the utilities division. I'm filling in for Teresa.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council. Again, my name is Darlene Hutchcraft. I am the customer service supervisor for the finance department utilities division. I'm here this evening to provide you with a brief presentation on our new online bill pay program called Click2Gov. Click2Gov allows our residents to view their bills, track their consumption, and pay their bills online at no additional charge. The website's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Since we went live on May 1st, this program launched on May 1st, and since we went live on May 1st, we processed over $3,200 in payments using this website and serviced approximately 200 customers, so the word is out and they are using the program. This is an additional payment method that's offered to our residents. It does not replace any existing billing or payment methods that we offer, and it is not a mandatory program. The first slide that I have here is the sign-on screen for Click2Gov. It can be accessed through our Goodyear az.gov website. There is a link on that website under online services that the customers can access this website. It takes them directly to this screen. The first time that a resident accesses Click2Gov, they need to register. They are given in their May bill a temporary PIN number that will allow them to register for this online bill pay system. It currently has gone out to all of our customers north of the freeway, for the ones that have sanitation only, and to the Cycle 5 customers, which are in Estrella Mountain Ranch. They have, at this point, received their bills that have their temporary PIN numbers, and they are the ones that are accessing it at this time. The remainder of the residents will be receiving them as their bills go out this month, and since we do bill by cycle, they will go out each Friday for the following Fridays of the month of May. So they will be able to pay their bills in June using this bill pay method. The account information screen shows the customers all their pertinent information. It gives the location address, the phone number that we have on file, shows whether their account status is active, meaning that payments are being allowed on the website at this time. It will show them their account balance, if they have a past due amount, and it provides a button for them to view their last bill. That also gives them their due date and the total amount due for that last bill. Once they select payment history, this will allow the customers to view the last approximately 18 months, depending on when they started service, of their payment history. It'll show the date that they made each payment, the amount of that payment, and the status. So it will show whether it is applied or whether it is a pending payment. And again, it also gives them that button where they can reflect back and view their last bill. The Make Payment screen has two options that are offered. The first one is an on-demand option, which allows the customers to make a one-time payment, but it will store their credit card information if they so choose on a secure server. The benefit to the customer using this option is that if they choose to use that card to make future payments, they do not have to re-enter the card number, the expiration date, all of that pertinent data. It will just show them on that screen the last 4 digits of their card number. They can select it and pay their bill at that time. The immediate payment option does not store any credit card information, and that will allow them to make a one-time payment, again, not storing the data. At this time, we don't offer recurring payments through the online billing system, but that is something that is being looked at this time, and that will allow them to use that credit card they store on demand to set up a payment every month, similar to the SurePay program we have, which directly takes that from their designated checking or savings account.
Yeah, that's what I have.
The consumption
Before you go
screen.
any further, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
What kind of security provisions do you have built into the system?
The security for this was obviously all handled by our IT department, and I'm not familiar with the exact terminology of it. I know that they researched it for approximately 1 year for security measures for it. It is on a secure server, and I know that it is 128-bit encryption. It's an extremely secure website. Does that answer your question? That's the best information I have. I apologize. Okay, the consumption screen here will show the customer the services that they have attached to their account. And it also, if you click on the highlighted number here on this screen, that is the customer's meter number. And that will take them to a screen which will show them all of their billing periods, the number of days in their billing cycle, their average daily usage, and the total usage that they were billed for on that bill. It has other buttons here. They can view the years by year or row. They're just different graph options that the customers have available to them. This one here is by row. We also have it by column. And it just will show them that each of those numbers represents a period or the month, January, February. And it will show them to the right their number of gallons in thousands that they used for that billing period. The next screen that they have access to is the billing history. This screen will show the bill date, which is the date that the bill was generated for the customer. It also shows the due date for each of the bills, and this goes back 18 months. It will show the balance current charges, total amount due. So if they had any past due amounts, the current amount due would reflect the total of all of those. They can click on each of those bill dates and it will pull up a copy of their bill. Looks just like this, which is very similar to the bills that we do send out to the customers. Very user-friendly format, and they, of course, can print this out at home if they need a hard copy or need anything, additional for their records if they don't receive a bill that month or whatnot. This screen here is the service summary screen. By selecting the small pictures there on the right-hand side, it will provide the customer with another graph form similar to this here that will show each of their services and the amount of usage and the amount of money that they spent on each of those services. So, for example, we have sewer. This one shows water. This shows the breakdown to the customer by billing date, which is located across the bottom, and it will show the amount of money they actually spent on water for that particular month. It allows them to kind of see at a glance the the difference in the water that they're using at months that they use more water, less water, and they can see this for, again, approximately an 18-month period. The Edit Account screen allows the customer, once they have registered on the website and provided all of their information, if they have any changes in their billing address, if they have an update in their phone number, if they would like to change their PIN because it's been compromised or they just want to change that periodically, or they want to update an email address, they would do that from this screen. This program is linked to our software, to the HTE Naviline software that we use. So any updates they make here automatically go to that system and vice versa. Any updates we make on our end will go straight to the Click to Gov, and that's an immediate update.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You said this was a free service, correct?
Yes.
So if somebody needed to do, say, a quick overnight next day type of payment, will there be a fee for that type of, so regardless?
As soon as they do the payments here using, they can use a credit or a debit card. At this time, we don't offer the checking option, but they can use a credit or a debit. Once they make the payment here, it automatically shows a pending status on their account. So they can make a payment on this screen up to the night before a disconnect or a due date, and immediately it will show pending, that payment is pending. It's instant, yeah. And then up in the evening when we do our update, the evening following that payment, it will actually post to their account and reflect on the following day as a posted payment. Once they make those changes, they will get a confirmation email sent to the email address that they provided, just as an additional security measure to let the customers know that a change has been made to their account, whether it be a PIN number, an address update, phone number. And at that point, it will tell them that this change has been made to their account. If they did not authorize this change, to please contact the customer service department in order to, research that further. If at any time they lose their PIN or forget their PIN number, they have the option to have the PIN hint sent to them, or they can call to their email, or they can call us, and we have access, all of the customer service representatives have access to their PIN hints, and we can give that to them to sign on to their account. In the event that still doesn't help them to remember, we can reset their PIN and give them a temporary. So there shouldn't be at any time that they would be stuck unable to access the website. Does anybody have any questions?
Very nice, nicely done.
Thank you. We're very excited. Very excited.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
But you can track your bill. That should help in conservation.
Yeah.
Because, you don't have to go through all your bills. It's right there in front of you. You say, well, what did I do in the month of December? Why is it so high? So it's great.
I do have one question. I think it's for you. Are we using 85395 for those north of I-10?
Are we using what? Oh, the zip code?
No.
Some of them, yes, some of them, no. We were waiting. The problem that we were having with that is there are updates that come over from Maricopa County to land management, apparently, and we had updated several of the accounts to the new zip code, and when those updates came through, because they weren't changed with Maricopa, it reverted them back to the 85338 zip code. So I contacted actually land management today. I'd been out on a maternity leave, so when I came back, I contacted land management to find out how we should proceed with that to keep those from being reverted back. I do believe at this time that the county has those updated. It's been almost a year. I think next month it will be a year, and so I will follow
Isn't
up
the
on
post office going to cease delivery?
that. They said 1 year.
Yeah.
They told us
About
when
there.
you're, exactly, so we've got about 30 more days.
So we may not be getting our bills.
Well, no, we've changed them once, and when we got that update, it reverted them all back to the old
I'm not
zip code.
blaming you. I'm just
Oh, no. No, so we'll definitely.
people are bringing it to my attention. So.
Absolutely, and we have had calls on that as well. So we will have that rectified immediately. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. We'll now move to the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. And Mario, you're back up.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council, once again. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an update on the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement that was endorsed by Mayor Kavanaugh in December of '07 and also supported by the City Council. I'd like to talk a little bit about the agreement itself, what it's intended to do, and talk about next steps. And also, I'd like to highlight some of the programs that the city has in place that are sustainable and what other communities are doing this with regard to sustainability. I would like to start out with a short video, which didn't work. It didn't work like, no, that's not it.
Yeah, I hope you're not going to.
Had it for a
Is
minute.
there a mouse?
Kenny wants us to turn our house into solar. Can we-
Hey, Ed? Yeah, cool. Can you just push that? Yeah. It's not? Oh, bummer. Yeah, it was a funny video about, it was a polar bear shaving himself. You'll have to take my word for it.
We would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good. Let's see. So today there's a lot that is being written about global warming and climate change. Yeah, oops. Okay. Time Magazine, Business Week, New York Times, many articles are talking about the contributing factors to global warming. They're talking about the growth in the world's population moving from 6 billion to 9 billion by 2050. New York City, second largest city by 2010. Other cities will be larger. Tokyo, Bombay, Sao Paulo, Mexico City. Articles that discuss natural resources, the fresh water is under stress, quantity and quality of water. Articles that talk about the consumption, the increases in consumption. Automobiles going from 560 million today to almost 1 billion in a few years. And then there are articles that discuss how companies, and in this case how the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement, how communities are adapting to this environment and responding to these conditions and taking a leadership role to reduce the impact on climate change. So all the information that's out there is generating a lot of discussion and debate. And so what brought the issue to the forefront for the mayor of Seattle, who's credited with this initiative, is the warmer than normal winter in 2004 and 5. Seattle gets a lot of its drinking water from the snow, well, all of its drinking water from the snow melt-off of the Cascade Mountains, and they also use that water to generate power. So that year was extremely challenging for that community. It was also the same year that the federal government did not support the Kyoto Protocol as policy, which is an international agreement to address climate change. The protocol became law for 141 countries in 2005, and so Seattle's mayor set out not only to commit that community to the commitments associated with that agreement, but also others. So the goal was to find 141 other communities to sign on to this agreement. Currently, today there are 830 mayors, and Mayor Kavanaugh is one of them, that represent 79 million Americans that have signed the agreement. So more than 1 in 4 Americans now lives in a city that's taking local action to reduce the impact on climate. So the commitment is not symbolic. It's very real. And 79 million people represents the population of Germany. And the conservation has been changed, and there are now 830 laboratories working to figure out how to get it done. So this is kind of a snapshot of the communities that have signed on. And Arizona, there are 10 cities. Goodyear is one. As I said, we signed in December of last year. So there are 3 commitments associated with this agreement, and for the most part, the key for communities is to meet or exceed the targets that reduce greenhouse gases by 7% from 1990 levels by 2012. Communities can also weigh in at the state and federal level that kind of push those levels of government to pursue changes as indicated in the Kyoto Protocol, and then also asking for communities to weigh in on the cap and trade system, which basically it's a bill that's out there that develops a market for carbon, which is estimated to be a $150 billion commodity. So the bill is currently out there. It's going to be discussed in the summer, but with the changes in leadership, it will likely kind of change shape. But the idea is that you establish this cap and trade system where an area of the country, there's a certain cap on the amount of carbon that an industry or sector can generate. And if for those businesses that fall below that cap, they now have that as a commodity to sell to others who have exceeded that cap level. So it's legislation that's kind of in progress right now, and it's likely to kind of change shape in the next year. This is a snapshot of just the process associated with the Climate Protection Agreement. A community makes the commitment and then basically moves forward to conduct an inventory of total emissions in-house, and that is from a city standpoint, from the municipal operation standpoint, and then also kind of extending outside of City Hall into the community itself. So when you read other communities' plans, they're all about, they focus in on buildings, facilities, pump stations, those major users of energy, and then also transportation, the fuel that's purchased to light up the fleet, and also, what transit or alternative programs are in place that kind of help bring that back down. So there are several cities that are in the process of conducting this inventory, and basically, let's see, Flagstaff, Chandler, Phoenix, Tucson, all in the process, and the city is pursuing grant funds. Goodyear intends to, there's a federal community energy block grant that is available, so we will apply for that to help offset the cost of conducting this inventory in-house. For the most part, communities hire a consultant to help them. Staff pulls all the data, but the consultant then kind of analyzes it and prepares a plan to reduce the total emissions that the community is generating. In addition to the federal program, there are other resources out there at the state level, and so we have a great specialist on board, and hopefully we can secure some funds to offset the majority of the cost of moving forward. ICLEI stands for International Council for Local Environmental Issues, and this is basically a resource for communities that are going through this process. They have the software that is available that cities can use to track and inventory and monitor kind of those major factors contributing to total emissions. And you convert kilowatt hours into total emissions, and then it kind of you establish a base level, and then basically kind of use that software to help track and evaluate kind of the operation of the community. So they have software, they have experts on staff to help at the policy, technical, and communications level, and they just also serve as a network. The City of Phoenix has hired them as a consultant, so they've been out to Arizona a couple of times, and when they're out here, they reach out to other communities that have signed on, so it's kind of a clearinghouse to get everybody in the same room, talk about what other communities are doing to move forward with this agreement. As part of the membership to ICLEI, the city is asked to designate a liaison from the city council, and the primary role of this person is to help build and maintain support for accomplishing the goals that will become a part of the plan. And also, it keeps others on council informed and also in the community aware of what the city is doing towards climate change. So that's basically the agreement and kind of the next steps associated with that in a nutshell. I was also asked to just quickly review some of the programs that the city has in place that contribute to sustainability, and the city's doing a lot. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the programs. Recycling, I apologize you can't see that top, but recycling is huge. We're maintaining a diversion rate according to our last audit of 30%, so 4,600 tons of recycling material is being diverted away from the landfill, and it's going to the recycling center. The water audit, conservation had a presentation earlier tonight to talk about some of the initiatives associated with conservation. Also audited 220 miles of water mains last year, identifying 54 leaks, which resulted in, or is an estimated water loss of 65,000 gallons per day. So by fixing those leaks, nearly 24 million gallons of water was saved, which serves about 247 households. Let's see. The city center the consultant is on board, and one of the options that they're bringing back to council is a LEED standard. It's an option. So that's being wrapped into the city center project, as well as kind of being a walkable community transit element to that area of the city. The city's moving forward with a park and ride facility. The city's flex schedule program helps reduce congestion during rush hour. The city is moving forward on a neighborhood circulator transit program. All city facilities are equipped with energy-efficient lighting, and HVAC units are controlled with through a centralized computer, so it helps kind of regulate the right temperature. And then just lastly on fuel efficiency, the city added 82 flex fuel vehicles last year. We also have hybrids in the fleet. So the mayor has a hybrid. It's 45 miles to the gallon, which is huge compared to the 20, 23 miles that the other vehicles get. So that's just a quick snapshot of what the city is doing in-house with regard to sustainability, to give you an idea of what other communities are doing. And just like I said, there's a lot happening on this issue just everywhere. So LEED is huge. Like I said, it stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, and it's a program. It was developed 7 years ago by the Green Building Council, and LEED is recognized as it's the most recognized building certification program in the country today. So you're assigned points for your project as it relates to helping the environment. So energy components, like turning the building a certain way to direct sunlight or redirect sunlight, putting films on the windows or shade canopies, or just to help reduce energy is assigned to certain points. Water conservation, waterless urinals, land has a few points. Landscape, xeriscape, also saves water, generates a few points. Using recycled materials for carpeting or building materials. So the buildings that amass 26 points are LEED certified. And then there are certain levels that go beyond this, and it's silver, gold, or platinum. Does increase the cost of the project up front, 2 to 5%, and there are hundreds of hours associated with paperwork to kind of document the savings. So, however, according to the Building Council, LEED buildings on average are about 25 to 30% more energy efficient than non-LEED buildings. Other programs, the City of Gainesville, they had recently passed an ordinance giving $300 discount to building permits for certified green projects, as well as fast-tracking that project as well. Dallas, Texas purchases 40% of its power from renewable energy. A lot of cities do this. It's 3, 5%. Possibly you can start with 3%. You kind of ramp up over time. And that's a picture of, APS just recently announced a new solar plant that's coming in Casa Grande area beginning in 2011. So that will serve 70,000 APS customers, and it will help kind of meet or deliver energy during those peak demand periods. Like the base energy is from coal and nuclear in the morning, so it's just kind of your backbone running all day long. And then during the high peak, this is when they tap into the renewable sources. So this plant is coming soon. They already have, APS has an energy renewables program in place for any businesses, residents, communities that want to pursue the purchase of renewable power. And SRP, they are revisiting their bid process to emphasize green purchasing. They're kind of incorporating green practices into their procurement process. Peoria, Arizona is, I believe they have some signals in operation that use LED signals that reduce power consumption by more than 50%. And then Olympia, Washington, just to give you an example of just something that doesn't cost a lot of money, they equipped their fleet with LED tire alerts to maintain tire pressure. And I'll just pass this around.
We could use that here.
That's what helps.
But what it is just regulates the tire pressure to the optimal amount. As your tires lose pressure, the engine works harder, so having the right pressure basically saves gas. And the math they were doing, $2 a gallon for gasoline, losing 3 pounds generates 4 cents. So, you can double that now that it's...
Especially with the hot weather change here, your tires change a great deal in the summer.
Yeah. So those are about, a dollar a piece. It's just, one idea that is inexpensive that can generate savings, potentially. So just to wrap up, so next steps, the city intends to join ICLEI as a member. We'd like to select an elected official as an ICLEI representative. City will be pursuing grants to help fund the inventory of total emissions and also hire a firm to conduct the plan. I'd like to pursue other initiatives as part of the annual budget process. Outside of that process, it's based on cost benefits, so it just depends. Major initiative, part of the budget process, low-hanging fruit, cost benefit. And then other topics that the City Council would like to hear about is the last bullet there. So you want an expert in here to talk about lead building, you want an expert in here to talk about renewable energies, the Solana power plant. Certainly schedule any of those to come in before you. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
So do you want to...
Oh.
Go ahead.
How often will all these folks get together to discuss it, or is it just going to be information coming out on the website or on the email?
As far as the elected official or ICLEI?
The one, you remember you showed us a map and you had 840 signatures.
Right.
Okay. Are these people planning on getting together annually to discuss new ideas that are coming from all the cities about what they've done? Or
actually, it was a part of the mayor took it to the Mayor Nichols took it to the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So it's an annual conference, and he got 141 communities to sign on that summer in '05. And so each year at the annual conference, there are opportunities to talk about this issue in greater detail.
so they'll be able to present their ideas, which we could capitalize on, of course. But is that the method that they will use to come up with what the different cities are doing to?
I think it just depends on kind of what each community is doing. Basically, you're tasked with pulling the data and kind of zeroing in on where a community can reduce total energy, total emissions. So it just depends on what facilities are in place and what those major generators are. Wastewater plants, transportation, buildings.
Sure. But a lot of them sound like they're simple and inexpensive, and we could put those into place right away, but we may not be able to think of them. So I was hoping that there would be a general place that we could get all these ideas together.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only at the conference, but ICLEI is just kind of that clearinghouse for all of these programs and services that we now have access to.
Thanks.
And what we need is, we can decide now, if someone could suggest themselves, or it doesn't have to be the mayor, so I wanted a council member if they want to take on the ICLEI representative, if anybody wants to take that on.
I just like to make a comment. After we voted for this, we received an email from a gentleman who was quite upset that we did. And it was interesting because before I voted on it, I really thought about it, because I have to tell you, the scientific community has not come to grips. They are divided on whether this is global warming, and I have to agree with them. So I was not convinced of that, but I voted for it because I thought that the subtitles are very sustainable for a city. That we have to worry about our air quality and and be energy efficient, fuel efficient, and building green. So there's so many sub-components of this that are great, but I'm not an Al Gore or Michael Moore fan of their total program. So I think part of this is to try to convince other people in the community that we can take the politics out of this and come with those things that really are pertinent to your community. And the things that staff has come up with, I think, are extremely pertinent that will help our city be sustainable. So, thanks.
Just a comment on that. Well, first on the LEEDs. LEEDs is more than just a conservation effort and a sustainability effort. It also includes a more healthful construction. You're living in an environment in a LEEDs building that should be healthier than any other kind of building, and that's isn't that part of the LEEDs concept? Because that wasn't mentioned as far as the health issue on this, and as far as what it does for the, I'm not sure it didn't even concern me, or I didn't even think about the global warming. What I'm thinking of, each city has to be concerned about the sustainability of that city. And I'm very concerned about the sustainability of the city of Goodyear. And that's part of it. It's a very important part of it. And I think that we approach that with that in mind. The sustainability of our city. And the rest of it that's on a higher level. I think other people are responsible for taking care of that at another level. But I am very interested in this especially from the point of view of sustainable city and sustaining what we have in Goodyear, because it's a very important part of the sustainability process for the city.
Or Susan?
Well, thank you. I'm not enthused about hiring another firm or a consultant to conduct inventory and develop a plan. I think it might be wise for us to maybe consult the other cities in Arizona that have opted for this program to see if we can't get a cohesive group and maybe hire one consultant to work for all the facilities, all the cities. What do you think?
That was actually mentioned as part of the decision theater. That staff had met with folks at the decision theater. They're related to the Office of Sustainability, and they had suggested, because all of these communities in Arizona are signing on to this act and doing similar kind of audits, is there a way that communities can pitch in and kind of contribute to that effort?
They can track it beautifully, that system.
We're going to be talking about the same ideals and the same concepts. Why do we have to go out and hire 7 or 8 or 9, 10 consultants for the cities that have opted for this in the state of Arizona?
Yeah, there are general areas like buildings and transportation that are wastewater, pump stations, kind of those key areas that you can focus in on, figure out kind of how to reduce the energy consumed or the gasoline purchased.
But all these cities have the same facilities.
It's true. It varies on
by size, naturally, but
yeah.
Certain tweaks, but besides that, right.
Pardon me?
I said there's certain tweaks that will, but sure.
That's why the city is pursuing grants to pay for this. It won't.
Here again, we could be using grant money for something else rather than, getting 7 or 8 cities getting grants where this money again could be used for something else. It's a waste of taxpayers' money, and grants are not slush funds. Believe me, they're hard to come by.
But the grants
as we know.
The grants usually have a name on them, go after this particular thing, so that money, if you go for a grant from the state, is going to be set
He's just
aside
talking about the
just for that
matching.
particular.
But he's talking about the matching money,
fund.
because many
Oh,
times
the
you have-
matching money.
you have to match it, so that's what he's saying.
Yeah.
That why not, as long as the mayors have gotten together and formed this this group, there should be some kind of, I agree with them, some
Let's
kind of
put it
overall
out there and
plan.
see what kind of feedback we get.
Have to
from
find
the
out
other-
about the grant specifically. Some of them don't require matching money.
Can I just say something there? I want to thank Sean. Thank you so much for all taking care of all those leaks on the water system, because if you remember, there was quite concern about it among the communities. And we talked about it because there was a gizmo you could put on it, cost so much money, and to be able to whistle and know the leak was there. And Sean assured me that you could actually go hear it with the human ear and fix it. And so that's a lot of leaks to fix in that shorter period of time, and a lot of water saved. So congratulations to your department.
Further discussion? Okay, if anybody wants to be the ICLEI elected official for Goodyear, let Mario know within a couple of days. If no one signs on, I'll do it.
Okay.
Okay? So. All right. Anything else? Okay, opportunity now for current events from any council member. Yes.
There's one thing. I just want to say thank you very much to John and to our Mayor Jim for coming to the Southwest Lending Closet sponsor party. I was really proud. We had such a good turnout, and the fact that we're able to go after these grants, thank you, and actually support this nonprofit that's so beneficial to our community. Just want to say thank you so much.
Well, the community thanks you. You're the president for 3 years,
Yes.
and you've
For
done a lot
long years.
for the closet, and we thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
I read early and it was not a
Councilmember Souza?
Yes, thank you. For the past 3 days, I've attended the NLC meeting at Tucson relative to risk retention pools. As a trustee of AMRP, which represents 60 communities in the state, and Goodyear is one of them, it was well worth the attendance and gained a lot of information for the pool as well as for the city. Also want to thank the council for passing the ordinance on parking, and the folks at Historic Goodyear were enthused about it. The following Tuesday, after our Monday meeting, we had a meeting of Historic Goodyear, and we received a lot of congratulations, a lot of hand claps relative to this ordinance. It's going to help us really overcome a lot of problems that Historic Goodyear has experienced because of parking problems in close proximity to Perimeter Park. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. City Manager, any comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just a couple quick things. The Friday night was a volunteer thank you dinner, which was fantastic. There were probably 100 or so volunteers present that have donated over 5,000 hours to the city of Goodyear. So it was really a special dinner, and it was a great community event. I finished all of my tours of departments last Friday. I said to every department, up to 5 hours in some departments, and so I have to go back to a couple, but it was a very enlightening process that I went through, so it was very educational. And I'm in Neil this week, the new employee orientation, so I'm not as available as I normally would be, but I am still in the office. And then finally, the one follow-up I have noted is that we will consult with the other cities on hiring a consultant for ICLEI to pursue sustainability projects. And then just one last personal note. Mario did a very good job tonight, and he's going to be a father tomorrow.
All right.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's exciting.
All right, Mario, have a good night.
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. An early congratulations there, Mario.
Yeah.
And you did a good job tonight, too, by the way.
Yes, you did.
Meeting is adjourned.
Hey. Oh, boy.